I just want to say that I'm going to be a part of the Doom Alpha that is, being happen tomorrow, and I really cannot wait to play it. I also didn't know that id was, going to make another closed alpha testing session. I thought it was just, one time and that's it. So it's really cool that they're giving more chances for people to be able to play the game. Just like that last alpha, I won't be able to talk about anything about the game, nor can I upload videos, so you will not see me making a video about the game and just talking, my first impressions and all of that good stuff. But that's not the main reason why I made this video. I wanted to make this video to talk about, what I've been missing from 90s first-person shooters, and since I've been playing a lot of FPS games from the 90s, it's, made me realize that there's a lot of things I miss about FPS games from the 90s. So I thought about why not make a video like this. And this video, it's going to have a lot of interesting, reasons of why I miss 90s FPS games. It's not like so predictable, like, I miss how FPS games used to allow you to carry all weapons, or at least like, most FPS games did that. It's gonna be a pretty interesting list. So the first one I can possibly say is I miss how developers back then really tried to find things to make the FPS genre more interesting. It seems like today we don't really see developers trying to be innovative or taking risks within the genre. It's always either playing it safe or like somewhat of a throwback to older style of first-person shooters, like what the new Doom is currently trying to do. I do kind of miss, how in the older days, yes, a lot of FPS games were inspired by Doom, but I also loved how they brought something interesting to the table, like Marathon with its story, or weapons having secondary functions, or just Duke Nukem 3D and all of its interesting weapon design, like the Shrinker or Devastator. The second thing is, I'm so tired of seeing all these arena shooters that try to be faithful to what an arena shooter is all about, but it ends up struggling to capture an audience. Basically, arena shooters are dead in today's age, and it's so sad to, see these games that used to be pretty much what you expected back from, the late 90s, and that was really my first taste, with multiplayer for first-person shooters. I know the new UT is looking good, but I'm just wondering, is it going to have an audience that will play it on a daily basis in the next 3 months? Same thing for Doom, or maybe Lawbreakers, I guess. Because, are these games really going to have an audience as time progresses? And don't tell me, games like Battleborn or Overwatch, since I really feel like these games, they're more like MOBA inspired first-person shooters rather than arena shooters, because I'm sure both of those games I mentioned will definitely have an audience as time progresses. I'm not really getting that arena shooter vibe when I watch videos of them, and that's why Lawbreakers is kind of in an awkward situation, since it feels like it's giving me what I expect from an arena shooter, but it also seems very much in the same vein as, Battleborn or Overwatch. I totally miss how single player used to be an important thing back in the 90s. Okay, you can argue that in the late 90s, games like CS, UT99, and Q3A pretty much defined FPS gaming back in the late 90s, but you also had single player games too, like Half-Life comes to mind, or even Quake 2 can be labeled as a game that's well known for a good single player component. But of course, it was also known for having a good multiplayer experience too. I was really looking forward to Halo 5's campaign, and I was hoping it would be the best thing about it, but it's definitely, the multiplayer that's better than the campaign after playing it and comparing the two modes together. And it's just kind of annoying that I loved the original Halo so much when I first played the campaign, and yes, it does have a strong multiplayer portion at the same time too, but I really think the campaign was the best thing about Halo 1. I also get annoyed that there's not really a lot of options for me in this day and age to find a good modern single player first-person shooter that isn't like a reboot of an old franchise, because you guys know I loved the new Wolfenstein games, but at the same time, it's an old video game series, and I always, liked it, the single player portion of that series compared to the multiplayer. So I feel like there's not as much options compared to FPS games back in the 90's versus FPS games in like quote unquote modern times. And I'll define the word modern by basically not playing like a Doom-esque type of game, because I know some people might have a different meaning of what is a modern FPS game. Is it like Half-Life or Halo or Call of Duty or whatever? I pretty much, always defined modern shooters by the Half-Life 1 era to the present era of shooters, because I personally believe that the original Half-Life killed the era of Doom-esque games. Well, sorry for going a little off topic here, but I'm just going to say that I just feel like there's not enough modern FPS series that really pleases me in the single player portion as much, like, in the 90's. For example, generally Halo is the one that comes to my mind, and I'll even put, Resistance, mostly for Resistance 1, but in the 90's, you got Marathon, Doom, Quake, Wolfenstein, Duke Nukem, and the list just goes on and on, since there are some more, I could possibly think about, or maybe there are, some games that I would like to try out in the future. So yeah, that's pretty much, my third reason. I just feel like single player isn't really as important in this day and age for first-person shooters, mainly because of my disappointment with Halo 5's campaign. The fourth one is kind of similar to what I was talking about when I was explaining my definition of what is a modern shooter or an old school shooter. But the thing I missed back in the 90's was there seemed to be more FPS games that catered to me. I don't know why there isn't a lot of modern or present day shooters that's doing that job as well, like how the 90's did. It's kind of sad, since I do like playing modern games. You guys know I love COD 4 to death and all of that, but there was just something about FPS games in the 90's that just seemed to appeal to me more than anything after the 90's. Maybe I'm just a 90's kid at heart. Last but not least, I saved my personal favorite one for this list, and I literally missed the days when id were the kings of first-person shooters and just being active. Nowadays, id is kind of considered a former shadow of themselves, and they are not as active like they once were. Go look up on Wikipedia, look how many games they were releasing per year, and not only that, they were very consistent at making awesome games too. I'm not trying to say they should go back to their old ways. I do believe it's good to have some years off just to get people hyped up, for a brand new game, then releasing it every year. Look at Call of Duty. People are just not getting that excited for it because people know it's a yearly installment, and the only people who are really hyped up on the game are the people, that play Call of Duty for the whole year, and then they just pick up a new one and play it again, rinse and repeat. As I continue to talk more about id Software, the last game they released was in 2011, and now we're getting a new Doom/id Software game in 5 years. Like, come on, man. 5 years, and then you had Doom 3, which came out in 2004, so it's just annoying as a fan to see them slowly releasing games like this. Obviously, id Software was great in the 90's, created the FPS genre, pushed the boundaries of the genre, and also showed everyone how you should make a great first-person shooter, whether it was single player or multiplayer. I really think there's no FPS developer I can think of to combat the lines of games they released. They were all groundbreaking in some ways, and they hold up very, very well. The only game that I personally think that doesn't really, hold up to this day and age is Wolfenstein 3D, but I still think, it's worth playing just for the historical standpoint of the genre. I highly doubt they'll come back to, these days, but as long as the newer games are solid, I'll tip my hat for them and admire them again. That is all for the video, guys, and I'm definitely looking forward to the Doom Alpha. Hopefully it's going to be fun, since, I've been wanting, to play Doom multiplayer, since it really does look pretty promising. And yeah, hopefully once the beta comes out, I could, talk more about how I feel about the game, because I always like to, share my opinion with you guys and just try to like discuss with you guys. Anyways, that's all for the video, and hope you guys have a nice day.